World War III starts tomorrow. The average person would not have time to react. And if you're thinking about becoming an expat, this may be one of the best reasons in the near future with the new presidents that we have around the world that you may want to actually consider moving to another country. And world wars do not just hit in the countries that are at conflict. That's why they're called world wars. Several continents, several countries get involved, but there are a few countries around the world that are historically neutral, and more than likely nothing will happen to those places. It's about having the best possible outcome for yourself and your family. I'm Austin Holleman. Like the video, subscribe. Let's get into the topic. Now, World War I and World War II will be nothing like the new World War that's coming about now, and that's due to technology, proxy wars, cyber warfare, economic sanctions, resource hoarding, and more importantly, something that was introduced in the Second World War, which was nuclear bombs. Now, actually, nuclear bombs have actually been a thing that have prevented another worldwide major war, which we've only seen proxy wars in the past few decades. But with more people like Donald Trump in office and people like Xi Jinping of China that are very aggressive towards other nations like Taiwan, you do have a rising threat for another global conflict to come about. Now, this is not some fear tactic or conspiracy. This is actually things that have been going around the world that maybe you did not pay attention to, such as NATO having tension with Russia over Ukraine. If you guys don't know what NATO is, that's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was formed after World War II as a way to prevent another world war from happening again. But with Russia attacking Ukraine, it actually brings a huge chance of Europe being dragged into another continental war, which would eventually lead to a global war due to alliances like NATO. And like I said before, China pushing into Taiwan, trying to retake Taiwan as they believe it's always been part of China. Well, there's also a NATO in the Pacific, and that would also involve the United States becoming involved, and places like Japan involved in that war with Taiwan, as those are our allies. Another war that's going on that would also drive the United States into is Israel and Iran. Israel is, in my opinion, the country that actually is the United States. They run everything that goes on in the United States. So therefore, they are our strong ally. That being said, Iran is our adversary. If those two go to war, the United States will 100% be involved. Also, global military spending around the world combined has also increased to $2.2 trillion a year, higher than it's ever been. And the United States has over 700 bases, or military bases around the world, meaning that it is ready to respond to any global conflict at any time. Another way that World War III has been already fought that you may have not noticed, for example, in 2023, Russia cut gas to Europe and people froze, and that was an economic weapon that Russia used. And this could only get worse if you guys don't know about EMPs. For anybody that's played Call of Duty, AI could be used as a weapon, as Russia has used against places like Latvia, and even cyber attacks on hospitals and banks on different target nations. Now that we went over a bit of overview of what World War III would be like and how it would be fought and who would be involved and what would cause it, of course, if you are living in the United States and you are over the draft age, then yes, you would be in the clear somewhat. Somewhat. You can still get drafted as a U.S. citizen, whether if you're living abroad or not. But if you are over that age and you are living abroad, let's say I'm just going to go to France. France would not be a neutral country in World War III. Okay, well, I'm going to go to Brazil. Brazil would not be a neutral country in World War III, for sure. Oh, let's say I'm going to go to Mexico. Mexico more than likely would be possibly involved. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on Brazil and Mexico. But from my understanding, Brazil sent troops to fight in World War II as well. So that's not very neutral. Now, if you are in a place that I would call a safe zone, a country that has historically been neutral, like Chile, or a country that most of these big nations would maybe at some point they would go for them if they were Adolf Hitler, but they're not on the target list. A place like Uruguay, a place like Botswana. In order for you to find the country that you would like to move to be in a safe zone country, let's look at the criteria. First thing, they need a neutral foreign policy, as I said before. No NATO bases or military alliances. Food and energy self-sufficiency. Low international political attention. Border security and political stability, and they need a low cost of living and a cash economy. digital freedom and access to global communications, and low likelihood of being used in proxy warfare. Now that we went over that criteria, I live here in Nairobi, Kenya. There is a military base in Kenya. Okay, so this would not be considered a neutral zone because this would be a place for, if let's say if Russia or China or Iran was at war with the United States, or if they had another ally in this area, they would target a place like Kenya due to that military base just being there. Also, the British military helps train Kenyan military officials as well. So this would not be a safe zone. But one of the few places that would be safe in Europe would be a place like Switzerland. If you guys don't know, during World War II, the Nazis actually banked with Switzerland while they were pretty much trying to take over the damn world. But Switzerland remained neutral that entire time, and it has historically remained neutral throughout most wars. That's why the Geneva Conventions are held there, because that is a globally neutral country. The only thing about Switzerland is it's expensive, super expensive. I remember when I had a layover in the airport in Switzerland, I swear I had like 2 or 3 big pieces of baked chicken and some roasted potatoes, and that was $50. So, and I know the airport prices are high, but that's high, even if that's in the airport. So that being said, most people cannot really afford Switzerland. So let's look at some other options that you may be able to pick from to have safety, a place that you want to get residency or a second citizenship in case of this conflict comes about in the future. So in East Africa, Tanzania is a politically non-aligned country with no NATO bases. It also has a stable government for the most part. And the reason I say for the most part is because it's not like the U.S. government where everything pretty much, I mean, the U.S. government is corrupt as well, as you can see, but everything works the way it's supposed to for the most part. In other developing countries, and no matter where they're at in the world, South America, Africa, Asia, for developing countries, things won't be as comfortable for an American because things are just different. Like a lot of it, even in Tanzania right now, you don't really have freedom of speech. You do, but you kind of don't. In a lot of African countries, yeah, like freedom of speech is somewhat recommended. It might be in the Constitution, but it's recommended, or it's limited freedom of speech. But I've been to Tanzania for 5 weeks back in 2023, and I will say, as an expat being there, it was expat friendly. Now, it wasn't expat perfect, like Thailand and Nairobi for the most part are expat perfect. You know, digital payments, everybody speaks English, you know, the roads are good. There's a lot of stuff to do. There's good internet. Tanzania had most of those things, but it didn't have necessarily great roads in Dar es Salaam. Like there's way more dirt roads in Dar es Salaam than there are in Nairobi and Bangkok. But it's not like going to Mozambique. Mozambique was not expat friendly. A lot of digital payments didn't work there. The internet sucked. The electricity was going in and out. Nice people, but the infrastructure was not up to date for somebody that's an expat, more than likely that's working online. You also have access to agriculture, clean water, and coastlines. Like I said, Dar es Salaam is a coastal city, and you have a cash-based economy, but it's, like I said before, accepting digital payments is common there. The next two on the list, as I said before, Uruguay and Paraguay, 2 countries that I've been to. I've spent a significant amount of time, or let's say 6 months in Paraguay, and I was in Uruguay for a week. I love both countries. One's cheap, super cheap. One's damn near as expensive as being in Texas. And that's what's going to make the difference between the two on which one you decide to position yourself in for a world conflict. Now, Paraguay is significantly underdeveloped compared to Uruguay. Uruguay, they had electric cars, all the roads were paved well, the internet was fast, the electricity was great. There was nothing to do really in both in both capital cities that I went to. But being in Uruguay will be just as similar to being in the United States. And that's not saying Paraguay is just like coming to a rice field in the middle of Vietnam, but it's just not up to Uruguay's level. But it was very comfortable, and that's why I was there for so long. So if you want a super boring, peaceful life with cheap cost of living, I would recommend Paraguay. If you want a peaceful, friendly people around you, but you don't mind spending a little more money, Uruguay would be a better option. Neither one of these countries are part of NATO, and yes, the Chinese have invested there, but they don't have that China-Russia power struggle that you see going on in places like Africa or Eastern Europe. And to add on top of that, if you were to ask the person that's sitting next to you right now or anybody that you know to point at Uruguay or Paraguay on the map, they wouldn't even know how to spell those countries, let alone they wouldn't have heard of them or they wouldn't know where to point at them on the map. So for most people, they're out of sight, out of mind. A country that I've been to many, many times that I actually love, I would never choose to live there, but if I had to live there, I would pretty much have no complaints, is Thailand. The only complaint I have with Thailand pretty much is the smog. That's the only issue pretty much that I have with Thailand. Other than that, Thailand is a place where you can have access to all the electronics pretty much duty free, it seems. They cost the same amount that they would cost the United States. And I guess if you're in the United States now, they're actually cheaper than being in the United States because there's no super high tariffs being put on them. But yes, you have access to electronics. You have multiple major cities like Bangkok where it's kind of, I've never been to New York City, but from being in Bangkok, I can imagine it being like New York City. It's 24 hours. There's always something to do. It's super expat friendly. All your debit cards, credit cards will work there. The internet it's super fast there. It's some of the best internet I've had in the world. And the real estate and cost of living is cheap. You can eat to this day in Bangkok. You won't have a steak dinner, but you can eat a meal that will have you full off of the street for $2 and $3, and sometimes even cheaper than that. And that's why Bangkok is the digital nomad. It's not the digital nomad capital. It's actually Chiang Mai, but at least when I was there last. But as far as I know, Bangkok is a place that digital nomads love, expats love from all over. You can meet people from Russia there. You can meet people from Africa there. You can meet people from the North and South America there. You can meet people from all over the world in Bangkok, not just visiting, but living. They also have excellent healthcare, and historically, they have been a neutral country. And that's not entirely accurate because when World War II came around, they did side with Japan. But otherwise than that, they're not a country known to dibble and dabble in wars and have all these things that they're not like the United States where they're trying to fight wars and gain influence around the world. For the most part, Thai people are just concerned about Thai people. Now, this is in the Caucasus region, and it is considered Europe, or if you want to call it West Asia, but it is Georgia. Georgia is a non-EU country, non-NATO country, but it is aligned with the West despite its distance from Russia. Now, one way Georgia attracts foreigners is through low taxes and being a crypto-friendly country, which a lot of people that are digital nomads or expats do use crypto. So this will be an interesting country for you to consider on your list if you want to move to Europe to avoid the world conflict. Georgia also has just like Switzerland, a natural mountain border or barrier that allows it a better defense system against invaders. And yes, Russia has invaded nearby countries that actually border Russia, but somehow it maintains to stay neutral. So just keep that in mind. Now, the next country on the list is Indonesia. And Indonesia, if you don't know, has the archipelago, which is a natural separation from chaos if they were being invaded. Now, you may have to worry about natural disasters, but more than likely, you don't have to worry about foreign invaders coming into a place like Bali or anywhere else in Indonesia. Indonesia is energy sufficient, food sufficient, and resource rich, and it has never been targeted by NATO, US, or China. And if you guys don't already know, places like Bali, Jakarta, are places that a lot of expats. I have not personally been to Bali myself, but pretty much everybody I know that has been to Asia, or most people I know in general that do travel, have been to Bali. And they say being in Bali is just like being in Europe. So I'm pretty sure it's expat friendly. Indonesia is so spread out though, even if one area got hit, you can always internally relocate. I'm not recommending that you do that, but it's just an option that's there. Now, I did mention Botswana earlier, but I'm going to add Namibia to that list for an African country. And the reason I add Namibia and Botswana is because both of these countries have low populations. I mean, Namibia really, I think it has around 2 million people, and the majority of those people live in one city, and the rest is just a huge desert. Like it's a huge country with nobody living in it. Same thing with Botswana. Botswana is nowhere near as big as Namibia, but it has a very low population. And both of these places are known to be very peaceful countries, especially Botswana. The governments are known to be stable and relatively peaceful in those countries, and they have growing economies, which means that if you were to bring money to these countries like Namibia or Botswana, you would be able to not just protect yourself and your family from a global conflict, but you would also be able to grow your wealth in these countries. And both of these countries typically avoid all major global alignments. They may align in a regional, thing like African alignments, for example, like the East African, those type of communities that they have. But as far as NATO and all that other stuff, they're not doing that. So now that you know places that you should consider going to during a global conflict, what are some places that you could go to? What are some places that you absolutely should not go to? So if you guys have seen the First and Second World Wars and pretty much any war that's happened in the 20th century and before as well, Eastern Europe is probably the worst place outside of Georgia that you want to be in during a global conflict. Eastern Europe is countries like Poland, Romania, the Baltic states like Latvia, Estonia. Russia will target these countries. And if Russia targets these countries, this is what brings the rest of NATO into the war. So I doubt you want to be in a country like any of those in Eastern Europe. Israel and Iran. Obviously, I don't even need to tell you why those. Those are trigger zones in the Middle East. Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. These are all strong major allies of the United States. And if you guys don't know, even during the Biden administration, Joe Biden was sending weapons and funding to Taiwan for the invasion with China. Japan has had a U.S. military base since the United States bombed it in World War II. And South Korea has also had thousands of U.S. troops since the Korean War in the 50s. So if anything were to happen in these nations, you better believe that if there was a war in Asia, in the Asian theater of World War III, these countries would definitely get sanctioned. EMPs, invaded, wherever it may be, they will be a target. And of course, Western Europe, outside of Switzerland, from my understanding, just forget about the whole Portugal, Spain, France, those are not neutral countries. And even nations in the Caribbean, I wouldn't recommend those either because those could be used for military operations with the United States. So how should you prepare to avoid this conflict and after you pick the country, what should you do? Well, you don't want to wait until flights start getting canceled, until other countries that are aligned with NATO start getting invaded. After you've picked the country, you want to visit that country if needed. For example, in Paraguay, you don't even have to visit and you can get a residency and you can work your way towards citizenship. You would have to renounce. And some people say that it's not enforced in Paraguay, but the law says that you would have to renounce it. But they said it's not enforced. But I'm going by what the books say, not by some underhand corruption shit. I don't work like that. So work on a dual residency, get a second passport, keep assets in offshore accounts, in other bank accounts in other countries, and even hold crypto. That's also something to consider. You can also invest in foreign stock markets as well. And I say this just because of sanctions and things like that could happen. You want to make sure you protect yourself from those. So make sure you also look into places that offer long-term digital nomad visas like Panama, Georgia, and Mauritius. Also, there is always the option of citizenship by investment, but usually those cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you can get a place in places like Maldives, you can get those type of things. But for the average person, look into dual residencies. If you can't afford to just buy citizenship, look into dual residencies. If you're a Black American, this is the time for you to run your blood and see if you come from Sierra Leone or Ghana or Nigeria, one of those countries, and I don't know if you want a Nigerian passport, but one of those countries that provide citizenship by descent. Besides high cost of living and tariffs and right-wing uprising in Western countries like Germany and the United States, you do have other things to worry about. And the potential of global conflicts like World War III that would involve pretty much every continent around the world is a real and possible scenario that could happen. And that doesn't always mean boots on the ground, but again, an EMP, blockades, it could be economic. People say that what happened in 2020 with the disease was a form of biological warfare. So just keep that in mind. I'm Austin Holleman, your only friend. Let me know what you guys thought about that video and that conversation. If you have not already, visit another country, find which country you are interested in, and work on a dual residency at the very least. If you'd like to book a consultation, you can speak to me directly below. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next time.